I want to jump right into it. We got a great panel, group of panelists here, and wow, over the last 2 or 3 months when we were talking about doing this, I had no idea the things that would happen in social media in the last couple months. So before I jump into the questions, why don't we just start with Avery, and if each of you could take 30 seconds, a minute to introduce yourself. Their LinkedIn, links to their LinkedIn profiles are on the event website on Eventbrite, so you can get their full details, but 30 seconds, a minute to introduce yourself.
Love it. Can y'all hear me? Okay, great. My name's Avery Whitehead. I'm currently unemployed, but I've been at the White House for the last 3 years running the president's social media channels at the Office of Digital Strategy. And prior to that, I ran the digital program at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Before that, I was at a government watchdog, and I started out in public affairs comms on campaigns. So I was with Beto O'Rourke in New Hampshire, and then Elizabeth Warren in Iowa and Minnesota. And I'm so happy to join y'all today and talk about social and public affairs and all that good stuff. Great. So great to be here.
Joseph.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Joseph Ferguson. I am on the Washington Post TikTok team, but that doesn't mean we just make TikToks. We make YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, and any place you can watch a vertical video where they're trying to bring you the news.
Paige.
Hello, excited to be here. I'm Paige Hopkins. I'm on the audience team at Axios. I specifically focus on our Instagram and vertical videos. I also run our Axios local DC account, so if you're local to DC, please follow us. I got my career start in local TV news, where I was running all kinds of accounts for local news stations, and I'm excited to chat with you all.
Great. Gina.
Hi, I'm Gina Florence. I am head of corporate social at Charles Schwab. So very different than all of my fellow panelists. I have been in social media since it started. I'm one of the OGs. I've worked across a number of industries, from .com to nonprofit to local government to now finance. So I come with a very roundabout way of many industries and watching social evolve over the last 17 plus years.
Great. So over the last 2 or 3 months, we have seen the possible ban of TikTok and then the unbanning of TikTok. We've seen a complete overhaul of moderation on the most platforms. We've seen the reemergence of X. We've seen the rapid growth of Blue Sky, just in a couple months. And also, I would say, maybe get into this, a little bit of a different tone, maybe a little tougher tone on social media, probably because of moderation changes. But I'm curious, these are kind of the big top-level changes. For each of you personally, in your work in social, what has changed in the last 2 months?
Yep. I guess I could start. Because we have such a dynamic relationship with our audience, I think that we put a thing out and immediately in 30 seconds we know how people feel about it. So I think the biggest change for us has been lots of policy news. People want to know how that thing actually, what the law actually says and how that affects things going forward. It's less personality driven. I wouldn't say it's much about politics, but it's more about policy. And they really want to know what the law says and how that thing is possible. So I think it's more engaged on a policy standpoint from the last 2 months.
Gina?
So we finished a massive integration after an acquisition of a competitor firm, and then we had a CEO transition at the beginning of the year. So right now we're undergoing just a lot of a new vision. Who are we as a combined company? Who are we with the new leadership team? So that's really a lot of what we are going through, as well as, a much bigger company. So making sure that all of our accounts are really secure, how our procedures are written. We have a lot of governance behind the scenes that we have to deal with, and so it's really kind of updating a lot of those areas. So it's a lot of day-to-day minutia versus and trying to figure out where do we want to expand to, what do we want to pull back on. So it's really kind of a looking forward.
Yeah, I could just add that I think all the changes drive home the point that you can't have a strategy focused on one platform. And so we've been focused on how do the things that we're doing make sense on other platforms? How can we expand and make sure we're relevant all over? And I think we are also seeing a lot of what Joseph said in terms of people want to understand how these big headlines are impacting them specifically. There's much less interest for, more cultural or like lifestyle things right now. Like people want to understand what's happening in the world. And so that's good because we can tell them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that having a strategy that is holistic and well-rounded is really healthy these days because already we've seen with the TikTok ban, we saw a mass migration to a Chinese-owned platform, Red Note. We saw an uptick in Reels users who then said, we don't really love Reels. The minute TikTok is back, we will be re-downloading and reusing. We've also seen kind of what has happened. Elon Musk has owned X for quite some time now, but we're now in a completely new ecosystem under a different administration and one that he works within. So that app is changing really, really rapidly right now, and we're seeing it in an entirely different setting. So I couldn't agree more. Things are moving incredibly quickly, and having a holistic and well-rounded strategy is just going to help you out as things ebb and flow.
I will just add to her point on the note of the TikTok ban. It's just ever more important to not put all your eggs in one basket. And I will just say the importance of an email list. Whatever you got to do to get an email address, I think is worth its weight in gold these days because you never know if a video is going to be suppressed, or you won't be able to see something, or like you don't want to be left to the whims of an algorithm. The people who want to see your videos should be able to see them.
Joseph, as someone who is a TikTok, you were a TikTok focus, and in fact, in your title, walk us through those days. How were you and the Post looking at the possible ban? Well, the one-day ban.
Yeah.
And how did you shift during that period?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold. I think so. Last year, a little bit before my time, we decided to get on YouTube. And we were on Instagram Reels. So that kind of like insulated us from the sky is falling mentality. But just us not knowing, I think, was the kind of the worst part. Like if it's gonna go, then it should go. But if it's not, then it should stay. So like that in between time where we couldn't really know how to pivot the audience or tell them what to do because no one kind of knew what to do. But we weren't, that bad because we had these other platforms, but it was still something that we were like very much keeping an eye on.
You mentioned, Gina, that you're with this reorg, you're looking at different platforms that you're going to maybe focus on and maybe that you're going to take away. Can you give us a little insight? Which platforms are you thinking about are emerging, and which ones are maybe less relevant?
So we obviously want to be where our audiences are, and we are on the big channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X. And then we kind of dip our toes into other platforms, doing some test and learns with some advertising, and we're trying to see what resonates. We have a unsponsored, community that talks about us on Reddit, and we're trying to figure out, does it make sense for us to jump into Reddit when there's already a vibrant community? We don't want to start something new. Looking at TikTok, we were exploring all of that, and then with the ban and the potential unban and the reban, it makes us kind of pause. Looking at Blue Sky, some of these platforms are really new, and as a company that everything that we do has to be monitored and archived, we want to make sure that the tools that we have are in place to support these. So a lot of times we're not going to be first to some of these platforms. Many of us remember Clubhouse. It kind of came and went pretty quickly, and we were trying to figure out, do we jump in, do we not, and it went away. Now we kind of like to see if there's a little bit of a longevity, see what happens, but we did do some test and learns on Clubhouse back, in 2020. So we just sort of dip our toe in, think about it, be strategic, but to the point earlier, we want to make sure that we're diversified, and we want to, maybe not be everywhere, but focus in on those channels that are the most performing, the top performing ones. X has been a declining one for us, but it's a customer service channel. So we are rethinking our strategy on that, being more customer service versus active. Same with, other channels. So we kind of try to look at what is the need, who are the audiences and what can we do? And scalability. I think we all have limited resources, limited budget, so we have to think about what can we easily jump into without having to, require a whole lot more resources.
Paige, you mentioned the importance of playing in various platforms. Can you tell, like, you do a lot with Reels or Instagram, but also TikTok. Can you talk a little bit about it's not quite so easy just to take the same thing and move it. So the difficulty on the one hand, being where your audience is in new emerging platforms, but also how do you go about tailoring that content so it's not coming off as, oh, this is someone taking a reel and sticking it on TikTok and it's not working?
Yeah, this is a good question. And one, like the platforms specifically don't like that. Like if you download a TikTok video and post it with the logo on Instagram, that's a big no-no. The algorithm's not going to reward you for that. I think it just comes down to knowing your audience really well, because I think, we have dipped into local TikTok for Axios. We don't have the national account yet, hopefully soon. But I think TikTok is a lot more casual. People don't necessarily want as much of a polished presentation. They want to feel like a real person is talking to them. Whereas Instagram is a lot more polished still, and Avery has hinted at Reels not being the best. It's true. But I think people expect more of a polished presentation there. And so it doesn't necessarily take a huge amount of time or effort, but I think small tweaks can help. And I mean, we're also seeing that with Blue Sky and Threads and X. A lot of our reporters have transitioned from being really focused on X to being really focused on Blue Sky and on Threads. And so we found that we can't always just take a tweet copy and then put it exactly the same on those other two platforms. Because they're looking for different things. So it just takes experimentation. It takes, being willing to fail and see some things not do as well in order to understand what will do as well. It takes a little bit of patience, which isn't always great, but.
Avery, on that point about Blue Sky, are we now in a world where there are red platforms and blue platforms, and Blue Sky is the blue platform, and X, and I won't even, social or True Social is a red platform. Sort of from the politics and policy side, a lot has changed in 2 months. How do you see that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and one that I think a lot of people are truly trying to figure out, not just for personal habits, but also like where are their brands communicating, where are their audiences getting their news. I have maybe a hot take here, and it's that we should communicate everywhere. Your audience is everywhere. People who you're trying to reach exist on all of these platforms. I think that it's important if you have an X, if you're in line, stay in line. If you have an X, stay there. Don't leave just because you're starting to see the algorithm change and the top voices shift. What happens in vacuums is that those voices become louder, yours becomes quieter. You leaving a platform doesn't rinse the platform. It just means you're no longer there, and the people who are getting their news on that platform no longer see what you're trying to inject into the conversation. So, a lot of folks are hesitant. They're migrating to Blue Sky. I think these are great options. I will caution, though, and especially when you have limited resources, starting a new channel, a new platform is such an undertaking. Growing an audience is incredibly laborious work. You need lots of hands, lots of capacity. And so I think, if there's one takeaway from me here, it's think really long and hard about your strategy and where your audience is before starting a new platform. I have the approach that less is more when it comes to channels. And if you can do, really cool things on Instagram, X, Facebook, maybe LinkedIn, for a lot of smaller businesses and folks who might be in those communities, if you can do a really interesting and compelling content strategy on those channels, stay put, tighten up and really listen to your audience and experiment with what you have right now before exploring another channel.
Gina, as Charles Schwab, a regulated industry, and we actually a lot of attendees are with contractors or regulated industries as well. The moderation has, will say, just it seems like in the last couple of months with the change of moderation that there is there's a lot of toxic stuff out there that wasn't there. What was there or was diminished three or 4 months ago. How do you, as a brand and a regulated brand, on the one hand want to be where the audience is, but on the other hand, not only protect your brand and can get caught up in incredibly toxic comments and divisions, and then also the whole regulated part. How are you navigating that?
So we definitely have to watch all the comments that come in, and we have to look for what are the trends in those comments. Can we ignore the noise? We know, bots exist. We know that sometimes there's campaigns that come out and, they're for or against something, anything. As a company, people, will often see something in the news and they'll go latch on to various companies for that reason. And so it's really about what is the ultimate trend and how does it move the needle on our reputation. We try to definitely make sure that we are a source of truth. So when in doubt, we will actually not post things that are very humorous or fun. We want to definitely make sure that, especially us, we're dealing with people's money. You don't want to do an April Fool's joke with people's money, just something of that nature, because you don't want people to think that their accounts have been hacked or anything of that nature, and especially if the market is moving. So we take, we do like to have fun on our social channels, but when there is a lot of volatility, we try to stay very neutral, keep it hyper relevant. So, our market analysts, when they have commentary about what's happening in the market, we will lean more so into that than anything else because we want to be a trusted voice. And to Avery's point, we may not leave a platform, but we're going to rethink how we engage on that platform. We might be more responsive than proactive. We might double down and say, you know what, we really need to get this message out there. We're going to go hard and post it and make sure people see it, put some money behind it. So it just depends. But, it is one of those challenges. And, with Facebook, we have to be in our comments all day, removing the ones that are spam, removing the ones that are fake, making sure that we are, again, that trusted voice so that as it's being, picked up and used by other people, that hopefully our message is what's carrying through because we know disinformation spreads so much faster.
As an end user, I've seemed to notice a lot more sort of toxic posts in the last couple of months. I'm curious, are you all seeing? I mean, are you seeing that as people who operate these ones? And how are you as organizations dealing with it? Paige, yeah.
Yes. There are lots of toxic posts, lots of toxic comments. I don't know if this is controversial. We don't do a lot of comment moderation. If there is like a genuine question or someone's not understanding a chart we posted or a concept, then we'll hop in and kind of add some clarity. But we kind of just let people fight it out in the comments. It's too much time and too much effort for our small team to negotiate all of that. We just try, we don't bait people. We don't try to purposely make people be divisive in the comments, but you really don't have to do much these days. So it's just kind of anticipating, is this a conversation we want our account to be a part of? And maybe we just don't post about that on that platform or at all. We have lots of other ways to reach our audience. Axios' main product is our newsletter, so it's really nice that we can focus on other products instead of putting super divisive topics on social media if that's not what we think is productive for our accounts.
Others on?
Yeah, I think when I'm looking in the comments, the first thing I'm thinking of, is this a human being? Because, you see bots fighting with bots, which is just, an insane, crazy place that we're here. And then, so after I determine that there's, a pulse behind this, I go, okay, was this comment in good faith? And then I also think of, do I see the same style of comment more than once? Because there can be really informative stuff where maybe I didn't explain something as thoroughly as I should. And then I can go, obviously, I don't think I'm going to go in the comments and defend it, but I will in the next video. I'll make more of an effort to be more thorough in something that I saw was a through line in some of the misunderstandings. I think the comments in isolation aren't really that useful, but in aggregate, when you can see like there is a mass thought and feeling behind something, then I take that in good faith once I know there's a person there.
We're going to come back to more platforms talks. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw out a platform, kind of a quick fire, and we'll go get your talk. But on Joseph's point, and that's definitely the soundbite of the day, bots, commenting about bots, and I'm going to add a little twist to it. It might be a bot commenting about a bot comment, which is commenting about a post that was written by AI. So I want to get into AI. How are you using AI in your organizations, and what are the issues of maintaining authenticity and still using AI, or not using it at all, but also leaving or not taking the efficiencies of AI? Who wants to talk AI in your organization and for the creative side?
I'll go because I think my answer is the most boring. I use AI, but I use it within Premiere to auto caption stuff. So like, right, and then I'll just go through and like correct things that it might have missed. But other than that, I kind of like stay away from it. I do, and it's not because of any aversion to it. I just don't think that it's good enough yet. Like once it gets good and accurate, I think I'll be more open to it. But a lot of the stuff that I do, I can just do probably a lot more quickly and more efficiently than an AI model. What would need to happen for it to become something that you would use on the creative? What's missing from it right now? Sure. I think that I'm big on accuracy. And I think that AI hallucinates a little too much for me because I know that I'm going to have to, if I was doing more expansive projects, maybe, but the stuff that my team does, I don't need a full-term research paper because what I would have to do is ask for it and then go back every line and double check it to make sure that it's actually good. So like I could just go do that and hopefully have it right too. So I would need the accuracy to be a little bit more. If there was a model that only did like scholarly articles, then maybe. If there was a model that I think would output in the style that I already write in, maybe, but it's too generic right now. I say that where we are with AI now, I don't know if you remember when the iPhones first came out and you could drink like a beer with your virtual iPhone. And like, that's not really useful, but I guess it's kind of cool. Like that's, I think, where we are with AI right now. And once it gets better, like you couldn't have predicted like Snapchat from that. But once it gets a little bit better, I'll be more open to it. But for now, captions.
Paige, Avery, AI.
Yeah, I agree. I think people can tell, right? Like you can't just create content using ChatGPT right now because it's really obvious that it wasn't created by a human, and people on social want that human connection. They want to feel like it's authentic. Something that I'm interested in on the AI realm is like chatbots, specifically the ones that are messaging people. Like I think that might be something that we see more of that might be useful. Instead of like a link in bio, it's comment this word and we'll DM you a link to this. So I think that might be something that AI can make more useful, can help drive web traffic for people. Nobody wants to do the link in bio thing. But for what I personally use it for now, I also do the captions on Premiere. Not a lot. Like it's a good thing to dump ideas off of. Like I want to do a post about this. Like what do you think the best format is? Or clean up grammar. For the people who like me are not good at usage and grammar, this is a very good use for ChatGPT and AI. As far as creative stuff, it's not good enough, like Joseph said. And if it does get good enough, then maybe my company doesn't need me. So I hope it doesn't get there so quickly.
No, I agree, and also a boring answer from me. I think like as creatives and copywriters, it's so important to still use our brains when it comes down to putting copy together for things. I find that sometimes if I just sink 45 minutes into something, genuinely sometimes that is time well spent and the idea just comes out better. And I will say when I'm using AI and I've plugged it in, and especially writing for the former president, like what would Joe Biden say about this microchip factory opening? And Allentown, Pennsylvania. And even though I see this mechanism is pulling things I have written before and giving them back to me, it still doesn't sound like him. There's this little folksiness and there's this little quirk to his tone that I don't think, especially when you're writing for a principal, that these things are capable of yet. I love it for copy editing. I love it for really basic research needs, like if you're trying to figure out how many times a politician used one specific word in an address they gave. That's a really helpful use for the tool. And I love it for brainstorming. Like if I'm going, we're doing something for ice cream on Saturday, what are some things about ice cream relevant to the state of Pennsylvania? She's really good for helping me with that. But when it comes down to the actual writing of the copy and producing the creative, I still think that humans are the best, and we connect to humans better than machines.
How much longer do you think that will be? Are we talking a year, 5 years?
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are some accelerationists that'll tell you 2 to 3 years. Some people say that's like, 10 to 15 years out. We're just gonna take it one thing at a time. We'll see when the transistors go up, and we'll know. We'll know.
So like them, I agree. You cannot replace human creativity with AI or any AI tools, but you can use it for some really tedious tasks. Our social listening tools pull in AI, and if we're trying to get a quick read of why is there a sudden jump in negative sentiment, why is there a sudden jump in positive sentiment, and we need to report on that quickly, it helps to kind of break that down, and then we can go dig in a little bit further. It just takes a task that may have taken an hour and simplifies it down to a little bit less. So that's really the biggest advantage for my team, is taking something that you still do need the human, lens to look through, but can it take something that takes a lot of time and shorten it down? Reporting, even being able to find some of the bots in the comments. Like if we see that there's a lot of repeat comments, okay, we just have to keep a lookout for these, and then we can kind of auto flush them out of our system so that we aren't paying attention to those. So that's really how we use it, and it's a very again, regulated industry, we have rules on what we can and can't do with AI in general. So even as a firm, we look at it as how can we help people get answers, how can we help our reps get answers faster to help the clients faster. So it's, again, you're not going to be talking to an AI person if you call in, but that person that you're talking to might do some internal search to find the answer faster, especially, that's kind of how we look at AI.
I want to do a quick fire on different platforms. I will just throw out a platform. We've already talked a little bit about most of them, but want to get your thoughts really looking forward for the rest of the year, kind of future, what you're thinking is going to happen in these areas, how you're planning for them. We've already talked about it, but we've got to start. TikTok.
TBD? No, I'm just kidding.
No, for real.
I think we mentioned it's a platform where people really value authenticity. They want you to be casual. They want you to tell them like it is. Joseph really is the expert here. But I think whether it stays around or not, I think vertical video is here to stay and short form videos are here to stay. So figuring out a strategy, if that makes sense for your company or whatever you're doing, I think is smart regardless.
I have one little quickie here. If you're thinking about platforms, you can really define into 2 different silos, community and discovery. And TikTok is a discovery platform. You don't go on TikTok to see what your friends are up to. You go on TikTok to see what everybody else is up to. So if you're thinking of a TikTok strategy, the one little nugget of advice I could give you is repetition. Find your niche and do it over and over and over again, so that when you hook someone the first time and they come back for more, they keep seeing what reeled them in, as opposed to seeing various different types of topic and format. I think that's a really good way to grow an audience quickly, and then you can start experimenting more on that channel.
Avery, at the White House, was there a TikTok account, or because of the Chinese issue?
Right, there was not a TikTok. So we were trying to do fun things on Reels, and it was really challenging sometimes. But we did do our best. Yeah, no TikTok at the White House.
Okay, now the true expert on TikTok here.
No pressure. I think if anything was already set up here, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think with TikTok especially, I look at TikTok and YouTube as like two ends of a spectrum, where on TikTok you can blow up pretty easily. Like people can find your videos, and someone with 2 subscribers can go to someone to get 1 million views tomorrow, and that's really easy. But it's hard to replicate that. Because anyone can do it, anyone can do it. So you might have one video that goes viral, and then the next ones don't really do that. But on YouTube, I think it's harder to get one of those like standout videos that really goes, for lack of a better term, viral. But if you can get more consistency, and you can see a slower build over on YouTube. So I think that if you want people to know who you are, I think TikTok is great. And then for some more sustainability, for some more predictability, I think YouTube is also good too. So I think they fill different holes within a strategy.
Gina, how do you deal with TikTok?
We don't. It is a channel that we've been exploring, and we have been doing some advertising on that channel, which is handled through a different group because we are diversified. We are spread out. So we have an advertising team that will do some ads on there, and we've used some influencers on TikTok. But as a company building, trying to determine, is it worth us going in there, having a channel, finding the right tools, the right people. We have a team that does create all the vertical videos, so it'd be in partnership with my team. And so we're just, we were charting the course forward, writing our policies, procedures, and then with the ban, we just sort of said, let's pause, let's wait a minute. So we'll see where it lands. But in the meantime, we're on YouTube Shorts, we're on Instagram, so we are other places.
It's interesting. We barely mentioned LinkedIn. Probably for this audience, LinkedIn is the most important social network. For this event, we communicated with people primarily on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, to talk about it for 2025.
We are leaning in heavily on LinkedIn, especially for thought leadership. As I mentioned, we have a new CEO, we have new leadership. We think it's a great platform for our leaders. As well as employees. So, if we share something on the platform and we have a large employee base, to amplify that message. So LinkedIn is a great platform. We call it our friendly platform. So we are definitely on LinkedIn. And I think it's a channel that 5 years ago I would have said, LinkedIn's for job searching. And now you do see it becoming much more robust.
How do you use your senior executives on LinkedIn? Do they use it, use their own profiles, and what's sort of the difficulty of, on the one hand, it's a brand, but it's on the other hand, it's their own account?
No, it is their own account, and most of our senior leaders have executive support. So they are really, taking what is the message that they are using in media, internally, et cetera, and trying to version it for social. So we have a good runway to go to improve a lot there, but it is, balancing who they are as a human, who they are as a leader, and our company message. Because if you don't just want somebody to be just, spilling the Kool-Aid everywhere, you want them to still be a human, and so there is a little bit of helping our leaders say, go to them with, hey, we need to talk about something that's a little bit more personal every so often, and getting them comfortable with it, because many of them are like, no, I don't want anyone to know anything about me. It's like, well, but we could talk about what books you're reading. We could talk about if you go and do branch visits, that's a little bit more human. So looking for those human moments as opposed to it feeling like a press release on every single post that they do. So trying to balance that and get them to see that they can have a personality. So we're working on it.
For Charles Schwab, is he active on LinkedIn?
Chuck is not active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
If you see a Chuck on LinkedIn, please report it.
Others, LinkedIn. How is Axios looking at LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn can be helpful for us. I agree. It is a friendly platform. The comments are not nearly as toxic there as anywhere else. I think it's one of those where knowing your audience is really helpful. Like, we won't necessarily post like local stories there or certain stories there, but if we do like something business related, something finance related, it can do really well and drive a little bit of website traffic for us. LinkedIn, the platform is like their team is pretty friendly toward sharing our posts and their various like newsletters and things like that. And so sometimes we work with reporters to share specific stories on LinkedIn, and then like the LinkedIn team will share them. I think it can be really a really helpful platform. They're trying more with vertical video, which is sometimes driving engagement for us as well. So it's a happy place to be, I think.
Yep.
I've done a few. I'm not. We don't really post on LinkedIn that much personally. On my account, I posted a video or two on there, and it is night and day. So much nicer there. They're like, "Oh my God, Joseph, great video." It's like, "Oh, this is nice. They're really kind here." So like, our team doesn't do that much on LinkedIn, but I'm very much like keeping my eye on it.
Yeah, quickly just to retweet Paige. Truly, what we do on LinkedIn when I was at the White House was job creation, factory openings, things that like directly impacted the audience on LinkedIn. We weren't going to go there to talk about, you know, whatever event or basketball team was visiting the White House that week. We had to keep it really specific and tailored. And every time I talk about LinkedIn, I have to talk about my favorite piece of creative I've ever seen, which was a LinkedIn post hiring a graphic designer, and they used clip art. And they were like, please, someone, we fired our graphic designer, need you to apply. So I think there's some really fun ways to actually look for talent, use LinkedIn as it was intended to be used, but do it in a way that reaches audiences who aren't just trying to look for work, who are actually, you know, found that the brand was a bit more tongue-in-cheek and playful, and it increases brand recognition a bit too. So I think when you're looking for talent, thinking of creative ways to do so on LinkedIn is also could just be fun.
Move on to the next one. A classic Facebook.
Okay, real quick with Facebook. 33% of folks using social media get their news on Facebook. And it is one of those places that feels like sometimes ugly, and I don't want to go there, but it's where so many people are learning about what's happening around them, and it's incredibly important to invest time there. It literally sways elections and changes the landscape for years and years. So incredibly important platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's a place that you don't always want to be, but you kind of have to be, specifically for us as a news outlet. I don't work personally a lot on our Facebook. Other members of our team do. It's a place that we post consistently. Obviously, with changes at Meta, we're not getting necessarily as much website traffic from Facebook, so it's not useful in that way. But it is useful in the way that, like, we have to confront the reality that people get their news on social media. And so as a news outlet, a media company, it's our job to make sure that there is accurate and trustworthy news to be found on social media. So it's not a platform we're going to leave, but kind of begrudgingly sometimes.
We use Facebook. It's one of our biggest channels. It is a great way for us to interact with clients, to post relevant information for them. We have a lot of articles, how to invest, what to do with your 401k if you leave a job, if you're thinking of buying a house, if you're getting ready to retire. And so what we really try to do is target and pinpoint those audiences there. Personally on Facebook, it's not my favorite platform, but my kids' schools communicate through Facebook. I use Facebook Marketplace. So Facebook still has a really strong hold. And if you are able to, have a community on Facebook, I think that's really important because people still go to Facebook for those things. Younger audiences are going to Facebook Marketplace more than anything else for buying and selling. They're not really looking at the posts, but, people are getting their news there.
X.
I think like what was set up here before, it's almost like as journalists, I think it's our responsibility to be where people see things. So like if someone is going to be on the internet and they're going to see misinformation, they should also see some of the stuff that we're doing that's like verified and fact driven. So I think that like while you might not think it's friendly, like we don't do this because it's friendly. We do this because we want to get good information out to the most amount of people possible. So whatever you have to do on X to like optimize your strategy for that platform and find something that works for you and your team. But it is good to be on there. I'll say that.
We obviously use it for customer service. If we have a major site issue, if there's a major market volatility and we need to communicate with a lot of people that are trying to access our platforms, that's where we're going to go. And we still use it for social listening. We have to know what's happening, what people are saying about us, what people are saying just in general. So it's still going to be important for us. It's just, again, our strategy is pivoting. And we're leaving the door open for if we need to pivot back.
I was just going to add quickly, it's in addition to, us sharing our journalism there, I think it is a helpful platform for us in terms of our events wing of our company and getting the word out about when we're having live events, sharing clips from speakers there. That can be kind of a less toxic area of Twitter, and it can be useful both for our followers and for us as trying to like get the word out about things we're doing.
And you called it Twitter.
Oh, right. Okay. Everyone still calls it
Yeah.
Twitter, though. Let's be
No,
real.
for sure.
I know. It's just, it's so funny.
Also, earlier you said Clubhouse, and I think the fall of Clubhouse was because Twitter made Spaces. So I think that like seeing what features different apps pick up, I think is important too, because like people are relatively active on Spaces. Like it used to be a lot bigger, but every time I go on Twitter, I see someone doing a space in X. I see someone doing a space. So like that market is still there. So if you literally want to hear from people, you could still do that there.
That leads to Blue Sky, and I'll just note, as a parent of Arlington Public Schools, a couple days ago, they announced for their notices it's now on Blue Sky, which I kind of thought, that's something is definitely happening when the public school system is now posting on Blue Sky. Blue Sky.
For us, it's too new. Just in general, we are watching it. We're paying attention. What's interesting is because it's decentralized, if you can have other people, claim your name with other servers. So that's a big concern for us. So, somebody could claim Charles Schwab at Blue Sky. Somebody could claim Charles Schwab at Charles Schwab. We can only claim our own server, or we can claim the Blue Sky, but it doesn't stop anyone else. So we have to watch out for that. And Blue Sky is still very new. They don't have, a whole lot of staff yet. They are ramping up, and moderation, they just aren't there for us to be there as a brand. We do have people in the firm that, have set up their own accounts and they're exploring it, and they're not using it for work purposes, but they are asking, when we go on Blue Sky, I want to be on there. So.
Do you ever claim your name and not use the account just to be safe? Okay.
We do that everywhere.
Okay.
I think Blue Sky is great for niches. I think like Avery was saying, when you start a new account, you want to niche down and hyper serve that niche. And I think that Blue Sky is really good if you want to find the things that you're interested in. It's not really as algorithm driven as X is. Like you go in and manually say, I want to see this, I want to see that. And I think if you are hyper serving a niche, I think it's great for that.
And then the final, I'd say, the biggies is Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is kind of my home. This is the platform that I use the most in my work. It's tough. Meta has made a lot of changes lately that aren't favorable toward news outlets. Reels can be tough to break through on, but I think it's also a platform that people get news from, and people really quickly share news on their stories or through DMs with friends. So similar to Facebook, it's really valuable to have valuable, accurate journalism there to be shared. So yeah, I think.
Kind of like you said, the gold standard are shares. I think things go very organically there, and you kind of have to if your audience shares it, it will do well, but you really want to optimize for good shareable content.
Agree. And if you're not posting on Instagram stories, it's such a low lift thing to share a piece of content to your story, and it will just butterfly effect that piece of media. And something interesting about Instagram is when I was talking a little bit about the difference between discovery and community platforms, Instagram is really uniquely both as they've built out Reels. It's like they're really trying to replicate that TikTok algorithm that serves you content that you might be interested in. And I know there was discussion about them maybe branching Reels into a separate app. So just something to watch. I think it's still a place where people go and they want to see photos. They want to see what their community is doing and brands that they follow. So keep that in mind as you're developing content strategies, but something to keep an eye out for.
Avery, can you kind of the platforms we're talking, the biggies, kind of bucket them into the discovery and community?
I mean, I think that the OG discovery platforms would be like your X and your TikTok, your YouTube. Those are kind of the ones where we really follow these huge creators and media accounts. And then in terms of community, Facebook and Instagram really come to mind as places where people gathered and saw what Aunt Becky was doing last Thanksgiving and, my niece's new baby. More so and more so, you'll see Facebook videos are now endless scroll, of course, Reels. These apps want what these other algorithmic and discovery apps have because user retention and the actual time that users spend on the discovery apps is so much higher than community apps. I do still think there's something really special to be said of posting just beautiful visual still photos on Instagram and Facebook. Those are still some of our highest performers on those platforms. When I was with the White House, we like to have this one content type called cotton candy, where it was the president with his grandchildren. It was him, going out to eat with Jill, wishing her a happy Valentine's Day. These were all photos and graphics, and they outperformed sometimes by 10s and 20 times what our video posts were doing on those platforms. So I still think really great photography and visuals is still a high yield strategy for those spaces.
Joseph, can you, for once and for all, I need to the difference between content for TikTok, vertical video, TikTok, Instagram, and Reels. When you're creating, how are you repositioning it for each, and what is kind of the core difference between those that the marketers need to know about?
Yeah, I think, and I think you would know a little bit more about this than me. I think Instagram feels like a more tactile platform to me, in the sense that you should go at a place and see a thing and hold this thing. You're like, hey, I just went to here and I found this thing. You have to be in the places, whereas something like TikTok, I think, is a bit more casual and is a bit more you don't have to be as polished. And they not only like it, but expect just a person with a microphone talking to them. Whereas with Instagram, you should be in the place. You should see the thing. If you're talking about something, you should actually have that thing in front of you. They want it a bit more visceral.
Paige, can you jump in on how do you look at the creating content for those two in a different way?
Yeah, I think they're just the form of explaining. A lot of what I do is taking our stories and explaining it in a 30 to 60 second video. And so I think what really shows the difference is I am usually very casual because I think that's what people on social media want. I got a couple of comments on a video once saying, why is she not wearing a professional newscaster's outfit on Instagram? And I know that that's not the widespread sentiment, but I think that kind of highlights the differences between videos for Instagram and videos for TikTok, whereas the skits, that you all have mastered really beautifully don't always translate for our Instagram audience as well as they do for TikTok. People on TikTok are used to seeing these videos. They like them. It's really helpful. It's not always the best strategy for Instagram Reels. And then I think YouTube Shorts, the other most popular vertical video platform, people on there are very they know a lot about the one topic they're interested in. And obviously the goal of all of these platforms is to keep people on as long as possible. And so someone on YouTube might have already watched a full YouTube video about this part of the economy, and now they've gotten to your short and they already know a lot about it. So I think you can be a little nerdier, a little more in depth on YouTube Shorts than you can on the other platforms where people are just like trying to get a broad vision of whatever topic you're talking about.
And I will say for YouTube, I find that because the platform allots for like literal like podcasts, you can kind of take it a bit more like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in your videos rather than just like trying to get to the point the quickest you can on TikTok. So I think like even if it's a short on YouTube, the audience is like, I'm here for like you have like they're less I don't know what the word is, but they'll swipe away less quickly. Like they'll give you a bit more runway. Yeah. They'll give you a bit more runway on YouTube to actually make your point and lead up to it, rather than them being, I don't want to say fickle, but like a bit more fickle on TikTok and Instagram, if that makes sense.
Are you bullish and doing a lot in vertical video? Is it?
As a company, yes. My team, no. So we partner with our video teams quite a bit, but yes, we are very bullish. In fact, my partner and I are doing a all hands later this week with another team, talking about how we are partnering together and doing vertical video. So.
Want to have each of you talk about one of, and I'm just kind of putting this in the bucket, the other platforms, Reddit, Snap, WhatsApp, Nextdoor, actually, some of the Chinese TikTok knockoffs that we saw, are they still relevant? Is there any kind of, not the big players, but some of the other platforms that you're particularly bullish on?
The kids love Snap. The kids,
Okay.
they still like Snapchat. Like you were saying, it feels like more of a community thing where they're just like messaging their friends. I know that they're trying to do like an algorithm feed for video. Should be interesting to see how that turns out. But Snap is something that has kind of like always been on like the back burner for me. Like, what's going on over there? Because who knows? One day, if they get it right, it could really blow up.
I have maybe another hot take, but Substack is something that I'm really loving right now, especially if your organization or brand is really editorial heavy, or you guys have lots of blog posts, lots of words. Substack is really exciting. A lot of brands are joining. I know The Real, which is a luxury consignment brand, just started on. And the cool thing about it is they're not doing sponsored content. They're not trying to get you to use their products. They're rather just using their voices as brands to talk about things that their audiences care about. So The Real is doing sort of like fashion zeitgeist pieces and talking about who wore what that week. And all the while you're learning these pieces on their Substack, but they're not actually asking you to buy anything. And I think that makes it really authentic and genuine. So I would explore Substack if you haven't already. I think it's a cool space. It's a very clean interface, not a lot of ads, really good user experience, and lots of really cool content and creators on that platform.
I think a platform, it doesn't necessarily make sense for a media company, so you probably won't see Axios there, but Pinterest, I think, is a lot of fun. It's a much happier platform in terms of there's not a lot of politics there, but it's a place where you can share really beautiful images if you have them, but it allows you to link out in ways that other platforms don't. So people selling a product, or even people who have like 10 tips to sell your house or something like that. Like those kinds of content can do really well on Pinterest, and it allows you to drive traffic specifically to where you want it to go. And like Instagram doesn't let you do that in the caption of a post. So something to look into.
We did an influencer partnership last year on Twitch. It was really interesting. We had one of our chief economists play World of Warcraft with a very well-known Twitch live streamer, and they talked about the economy and World of Warcraft. So, I mean, this is not a platform we're going full in, but I think just be open to testing things. And, it took months for us to get that contract through. I did have to sit and watch 2 hours of the live stream as the supervisor, in which my son, who does like to play video games, said, "Even I don't play World of Warcraft, Mom." So I will say, but it was fun to watch. It was fun to see how we could play in different platforms. But we've been on Pinterest before. There's some advantages there. We'll never do WhatsApp. I say never say never. There's just regulatory stuff. We just need it. it's not open right now for us. So, yeah.
I think Twitch is really interesting, just like on the live streaming aspect, because people can actually like see you. It's a much more like personality driven. If you want to get to know that individual person, just like behind a brand, like you can't do a talking point for 3 hours. Like it kind of like breaks down that barrier, and you can like see them. So I think that's one of the strong points of live streaming in general.
Well, I want to get to questions soon. Before that, like each panelist to give us one area in the social industry right now that is overhyped and one area that is underhyped, that is going to be big and marketers and social media experts are not focusing on enough.
I'll start us off with this one. I have a strong opinion here, which I have about many things, but especially for marketers who are doing influencer partnerships and creator partnerships. If you guys saw what happened with the Poppy Super Bowl vending machine, where essentially this brand sent $50,000 vending machines to all of these creators' homes, and it was like stocked filled with this soda, or I guess it's not a soda, it's different. But it was extremely expensive, and we cannot ignore like the stress that really like hardworking American families are feeling right now. So when you're working with brands and you're trying to go for something flashy and ostentatious, it's just hitting sideways right now. I think that we should drop that tactic and instead search for micro influencers with smaller audiences, mom influencers, people who are just everyday Americans who are also creating content and have like small to medium sized followings, and instead engage with them. They have really high trust with their audiences, and I think it's just a bit more genuine and more appropriate for sort of the current moment. So that's my take.
Overhyped. This is going to be very, very much in the weeds. Hashtags. We don't need them anymore. We don't hashtag. You look like a brand when you do it. Algorithms are good enough that we know what's in the post. So yeah, hashtags overrated.
I think the longer videos, like the platforms keep offering longer and longer video lengths. I think you can go up to 10 minutes on TikTok. I think it's like 3 minutes on Reels, 3 minutes on Shorts. It makes sense because they want you to stay on their platform for as long as possible, but people are not watching them. Like even at 2 times speed, it's too long. Attention spans are really short. Every once in a while, you'll get a really popular one that goes viral if someone's a really good storyteller. But I think overall, keeping your videos shorter than longer is the way to go.
I think trying to duplicate brands like Wendy's and Duolingo, not every brand needs to be them.
Avery, wanted to follow up on the influencers because we haven't touched much on that. How do brands, if they're going to go after those micro influencers, how do you do that at scale? Mm-hmm. And what are some of the difficulties and pitfalls of influencers?
Yeah, I think one of the most compelling reasons to work with creators is because they have a really high trust with their audience. And truly, when it comes down to getting a message out on social, I think trust is at the center of everything you do. I know when I'm scrolling and I stumble across something and it feels like an ad, and then I see that little SpawnCon flag, I'm like, I'm gonna keep going. But the minute it's someone I trust and it's like, like the cutting room floor or some of my favorite like fashion creators, they're talking about a product that they just genuinely love and it's not sponsored, I'm buying it instantly. So I don't know what that says about me, but I will say that I think really going into your own feed and doing market research on who's talking about what. There are so many great sources who are monitoring these sort of creator trends and who occupies which spaces online that you can experience. Talking to your friends, talking to your colleagues, looking at your own newsfeed and identifying people who would be a good fit for your brand. And reaching out when they're small. I mean, most of them are not represented by talent agencies, so just sliding into the DMs and offering to partner with them and work with them on something is really cool. Another way you can do it is just gifting without asking for anything in return. If you want to send a product to an influencer you like with a nice note, it might just end up on their channel, and there really doesn't need to be any sort of financial transaction involved. I will say, pay creators that you are working with and building relationships with. These people are, this is their livelihood, and they deserve income and all the protections that come with this space. But definitely, I think there's authentic and genuine human ways to build trust and relationships with smaller creators, and in turn, get your brand in front of their audiences.
And the final question, could you give one takeaway that people can leave today and can implement immediately, go back to their office and tell people about that could make a difference for them? One takeaway, a hack, trend, something that they can leave today with.
Comment sections are the new news feed. So go into comment sections, reply, engage with people who are being nice to you in the comments, and the algorithm will bubble those up to the top, and people will revisit your post if they see that something's been engaged with, that there's conversation taking place in the comment sections.
Whatever strategy you have, make sure it's scalable. I think it's okay to do something one time, but like if you want to build an audience, you have to be consistent with it. And at conception, we should say, how can we do this every week? How can we do this 3 times a week? And make sure that that's like not going to lead to you burnout.
I think my comments are kind of piggybacking off of what's been said, but one, comments in terms of that, you can also, as a brand, comment when appropriate. Don't force it, but I think that can, when people see you in the comments, it can kind of build trust and make you seem more personable. And then I think a good piece of advice is just every trend is not for everybody.
I love that. Love that. Yes, make sure you're authentic to who you are as a company. So, you can still have fun, but you can be authentic. You can engage with your community. So just, do what feels right for your own company. Don't try to be anyone else.
Great. Let's go to questions from the audience. Robert, right over here.
Okay. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Izzat from Yemen. I'm a content lead in a platform targeting Gen Z. I'm a big fan of Joseph. And my question to Joseph also, I know your content is mainly in a TikTok, but sometimes I saw some posts in Washington Post Universe in Instagram. When you post it in Instagram, do you do reversion for the video or just you take it from TikTok to the Instagram? Thank you.
Well, hi, nice to meet you. When we post to all the other platforms, I don't rip it. I take the raw video file that I get from Premiere and post it to all these other places. So nothing with you're not gonna see a video with a TikTok watermark on YouTube from me. I take the original video that we do and we put it everywhere.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm from Merit Group, an agency in this area. I know you said that, hashtags are defunct. I obviously also saw Masuri's post letting us all know that too. I was wondering what your thoughts are on social SEO in general and how that can feed into your greater marketing program.
I think it's important. Using those keywords is valuable, one, for search. Sometimes you search something on Google and an Instagram video or a TikTok video pops up. So it's important for search off of the platform, but search in platforms is becoming a lot more popular and important as well. When I want to cook something, I don't search the recipe in Google. I search for pasta, whatever, in TikTok. So making sure that you're using SEO optimized language captions is really important. And maybe that's a good use for ChatGPT, figuring out the best SEO for your video if you're a beginner and learning how to optimize posts. But I think it's something that more brands should be paying attention to.
This isn't meant to be undermining of the conversation, and it might actually not be appropriate simply from a geographical perspective, but are we doing anything sort of internationally? And this is the key word, Telegram, for example. Is it only inbound that we're sort of getting influence from outside, or are we also posting abroad on Telegram for an audience globally? Does that make sense? And if the answer is no, we don't do Telegram, it's not important to us, fine.
We don't use Telegram.
We also don't, but we hope that our videos reach every corner of the world.
Yeah, we don't use Telegram, but I think our third or fourth biggest city is Sydney, where we're popular. So the internet goes all the places.
we would collaborate with foreign dignitaries to reach their audiences, but on platforms that were American-owned that we'd already been on.
Sorry, I'll be really quick. Just a question: with everything going on with a lot of companies removing language and words, what is kind of your thought process on, I guess, how to go about that, and if you believe that you should start seeing that from all companies, or if you feel that it's the company's choice, they do them, and whatever happens, happens?
And are you referring to, for instance,
Like DEI,
DEI,
women, words like very important words that are slowly being taken out.
Email list is what I have to say to that. If the people who want to watch your videos can subscribe in a certain way, so you can like get them to you can get the videos to them directly. What the platform chooses to take out won't matter.
I was just going to say, it might be something to talk to your legal department about. We've been having ongoing conversations with ours about what we can say, what we should say. We just want to make sure that we, are doing what we value as a company and what complies with executive orders.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bryn. I have a social media agency here in the DC area. I'm just curious to hear your raw, unfiltered thoughts about just where you see this next year going with the current administration, how they're using social media, if you think that's going to change how users are using social media, and just any other comments or thoughts on just like how it's going to change in 2025.
Avery, that's for you.
I know, I'm afraid of that. I will say, truly, because why not? It's been a really disheartening to like watch some of the pieces of content that have gone out on these channels that for the last 4 years, my colleagues and I have just spent painstaking hours trying to make safer and more inclusive and accessible spaces. So I don't have a good answer for you. I think that, kind of what you were referencing earlier, like red platforms and blue platforms, I still think we should be communicating everywhere. I do think we're going to just see this increasing polarization of platforms and where folks are getting their news and learning about the world around them. So I think that polarization, it applies to social groups and communities, and it also applies to online communities. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for, but buckle up. Yeah, that's my unprofessional answer.
People in the government are being more online, not less. So that's what I have to.
I think it just kind of comes down to how do you know what voices to trust? As we think about how we share other content, for us, we have to also think about how does it move the market? And how do we respond and how do we react? So I think it's just about every day is going to be a fun day.
Avery, real quick on the White House, as soon as there's a change in administration, do they just erase everything that was in the previous one, but the subscribers stay? Is that how it works? Or?
Yeah. So there was some funniness during this transition, but normally what happens is all of those accounts' audiences are set to 0, but the posts then of the original account were archived. So POTUS became POTUS 46. What typically happens then is you unfollow POTUS and your followership is migrated to the archived accounts. But we had some folks who remained sort of following on the new channels, unfollowed, and then there was some refollowing. So there was definitely some interesting pieces going on, but it's not perfect. And it's 35 million was our audience on X. So that's a lot of folks to migrate and a lot of people to kind of keep in the right silos, especially with that agency or that feels like an agency, but especially with that company being understaffed now too. I know that there was some fuzziness there, but yeah, that's typically what happens is those audiences are reset to 0.
Hi, everybody. Crystal Ward with Vanguard Communications and also the PRSA DC chapter president. Thank you so much for the conversation today. I know a lot of our clients have webinar fatigue, and so they've been really excited about the live option on many of these platforms. So I was curious if you've been using any of those live video options and if you're seeing strong engagement in those places.
We don't do a ton. We do Twitter Spaces from time to time, and we also live stream some of our events on YouTube, which can be very popular for our audience, depending on the event, depending on the speaker. But I think it's smart to utilize live features when it makes sense, especially if you have like a really engaged audience and something to do in real time. It won't necessarily work for every situation. I think it's kind of awkward when a brand does a live and no one's in it. But I think it's something to plan out and try if you're interested.
So I used to chair the Digital Journalism Task Force for the National Association of Black Journalists, and we did a lot of live streams on Facebook, even a few on Twitch, some Twitter Spaces. So it's definitely a good option, and I encourage more live if you can structure out an event, and it's not just people going like, so what do you think? It's like just have a game plan, but it's good.
Hi, great panel. Thank you very much. I learned a lot today. My name's Raj Kara from Make Media, and I'm on the B2B side, and we're actually kind of close to cracking the code about infusing authentic content with AI. I think it'll happen this year. I've noticed that my LinkedIn following has grown a lot just in the last 2 years, and I've gotten a lot of business because of it. What metrics do you use to track if your social media efforts are successful and worthwhile? KPIs, any kind of metrics?
Gina, you guys must do a lot of tracking for that. So.
Yes, so we obviously do all the standard KPIs within platforms, so likes, comment shares, followers, just to sort of see how both the health of the channel and the content is performing. But then we also look at other tools such as social listening. What's our sentiment? And then we use a tool called RepTrack to see how we're improving our reputation. So we have both the micro level at the platform and the individual content, and then we look at it as a bigger communications department. So for you, I would definitely pay attention to what's your engagement. If your engagement's going up, that is a great metric for LinkedIn. To the point that Avery made earlier, sometimes it's about finding the niche. You don't need 1 million followers. If you have, 300 followers, but they are hyper engaged, you're doing amazing.
Metric, do each of you have a favorite metric or a metric that you watch more than anything else?
On Instagram, shares, but I think if you wanted one across platforms, like Gina said, engagement rate is the best one to figure out of the people who saw your post, who engaged with it. I think that's really valuable.
I like retention time. How
For video.
Yeah, for video. It's like if I make this video, how much of it is the average person actually going to watch?
Hi, Tyler Simpson, Anthology Communications. I'm very curious about your thoughts about the new pay-to-play style that's been implemented in the X over the past few years. As someone who works in like the government space, I kind of feel like when your client is not willing to like follow along with the pay-to-play because the platform is now in a place where if you pay to play, you get more, views and stuff. Just what your thoughts about that are.
You got to make amazing organic content.
I mean, I guess for the two media companies, do you boost, or is almost all of yours organic content, or are you paying for this Post and Axios also pay to get greater delivery?
Everything I work on is organic. The vast majority of our posts across all of our social media is organic. We have a revenue team and advertisers who are selling the ads that you see in newsletters. Sometimes those cross over to X or to social media platforms, and so they'll very clearly have the sponsor tag. I think in terms of like the pay to play, like getting verified and that kind of thing for a media company, it's essential. Like we can't have fake Axioses out there. It just depends on what kind of company are people trying to impersonate you on these platforms, that kind of thing. Boosting can be valuable, but if you have really good content, you don't need it. Or you don't need it every time. It might be helpful once or twice.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. And if a particular platform it needs you to do pay to play, then I would say still post there, but don't put a lot of effort into optimizing for that platform, right? Like there are plenty other platforms we can grow organically.
I also go back to the goals. If the goal is to drive traffic, you absolutely do need to do the paid model. If you are trying to build awareness for your company or your brand or whatever, you've got to break through and build the organic side, and you've got to participate in the community within your channels. So it's if you're talking to a client, it's what's their end goal? Do they want to build awareness, or do they have a specific, bringing in new clients, new traffic, et cetera?
One more question?
Hi, my name is Sophie Feldman. I work at the national nonprofit organization called Campaign Legal Center, where we're dedicated to advancing democracy through law. We talk a lot today about tailoring your content for the different audiences and the different types of content that audiences like on, say, X versus Blue Sky, or for short form video like on TikTok versus Instagram, and the types of content that those people like on the different platforms. But I'm curious, especially for like Axios and Washington Post and even the White House, did you guys for a certain story create different content to post? For example, for a certain story, did you create 2 different videos to post on TikTok versus Instagram? Or is it more just, I think TikTok is going to like this video, I'm not going to post it on Instagram? Or for a certain story on Axios, are you creating 2 different posts to post on X versus Blue Sky? Or is it just an understanding that like we're probably going to get more engagement on Blue Sky for this or versus on X, that kind of thing?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Sometimes it's like we have a small team. I'm sure we all have small teams. Sometimes it's like, I think this is a better reel than TikTok, but I don't have the bandwidth to record a different version. I think for the platforms where it's a little easier to switch up copy, like we absolutely do have different tweets, X's, posts. That was a struggle. We absolutely do have different posts on X than we do on Blue Sky sometimes, than we do on Threads other times. Other times it's just like tailoring, this is gonna go on X and we're not gonna post this on Threads or on Blue Sky. So it's just kind of, it depends, which isn't a great answer, but you have to do it based off the bandwidth of your team.
I know we don't do that, but it is kind of just an understanding that like this video was probably going to do better here or not as well here. So it's just like managing the expectations based off of the content you're posting.
I would say that because we, like I referenced earlier, this cotton candy content, the feel-good, warm and fuzzy content, we really tried to keep that on Instagram, Facebook. So we weren't necessarily changing it for different platforms. We just sort of knew, where should this live? Maybe where should we skip? And then with respect to limited capacity, I find that changing copy, going from long form on Facebook, even 2 to 3 paragraphs sometimes, and then shrinking that down on Twitter or X always is really great, as opposed to threading something really long. And in terms of videos, like we'll post a 20-minute piece on YouTube, cut it up into 5 different sections, and move all 5 of those as reels. So it's not necessarily producing totally unique content, but finding those really low-lift ways to cut it so that it works better for that platform and you get a little more bang for your buck.
Final question.
Guys, great panel. Derek Malloy with the AMADC. And my question stems around the polarization that you guys talk about in the climate that we're going into. What ways do you say we should kind of be able to stay in the middle there, right? You got red and blue, but how can you stay purple and posting on these different platforms, maintaining your message and not compromising your business, your personal brand, and being able to kind of stay neutral and promote a positive message at the same time?
I really feel like the values of your organization, your mission statement, sort of those like bedrock foundational pieces that drives the messaging of your organization, I think those should just be your North Star at all times. And I really loved what you said about how not every trend is something we need to participate in. I think that's also true of conversations. We don't need to join every conversation. We don't need to, impose a viewpoint on something that feels inauthentic to your organization. So allow those foundational values to remain your North Star. And if those values enter, public discussion or dialogue, maybe that's a good time to inject and add, the point of view of your principal or your organization. But I think that, I think stay true to what centers your org. And that feels more genuine and authentic. And as far as communicating on platforms that are becoming more polarized, I don't think that at least right now, I don't think that brands are having negative perceptions because they continue to communicate on various platforms. I think audiences understand that people will communicate everywhere and are not making, quick judgments about brands who continue to communicate on X or Blue Sky or other platforms.
Great. With that, let's give this great panel a round of applause. Thank you so much for great insights. And we still we have coffee, and I see a lot of pastries back there, so please stay around and let's chat. And I think some of the panelists are going to be around. So thank you all for coming. We'll be sending out some information about the Mid-Atlantic Marketing Summit on October 9th. And we're going to be having, hopefully, some of these panelists back there as well, along with tons of content, keynotes, panels, presentations, case studies. It's going to be great. So probably 30 different sessions. So we hope that you will come to the Mid-Atlantic Marcom Summit in October. Thank you.